case, we are in this TVT. It should be a pretty exciting one for French supremacy as well. Not something that we see this late in the bracket oftentimes, but in the top right-hand side of the map, it is the child prodigy for Team Liquid. Clem.
In the bottom left, funnily enough, the former child prodigy, it is MarineLord.
It's hard to call them a child anymore, but he was once upon a time, and you know, that kind of sticks. In my mind, Maru still. In my mind, you know, the first time that I faced Maru in a tournament, he was like this little kid.
Oh, no,
in my mind, he's still a child.
I think people can understand what we mean. Like, Clem, very young, had a lot of promise, delivered on it. MarineLord was very young when he first showed promise, and he did deliver on it to an extent, but then he retired. Yeah. So, you know, the story is a little stronger here for Clem as far as a straight line, but MarineLord's had, I guess, the redemption. But your comment about, like, well, he's a kid once reminds me of, you ever watch The Guild, the Felicia Day thing?
I have not, no.
There's a beautiful line in it that I'd never thought of until I heard it. But she was explaining herself basically to some guy, and she was like, "Oh, I was a violin child prodigy, and then I grew up."
That's pretty good.
So she just like, yeah, she just lives at home and plays World of Warcraft all day.
Yeah, that's part of your identity goes away with being a child prodigy when it's such a big part of that, right? Like we've seen it from like the likes of TY and Maru now. Full-grown men in their own right as well. TY more so even out of the or transitioning into a commentating career at the same time as he was playing there. So yeah, time definitely goes by, and this is a game with tons of history, and so we've seen a revolving door of players, but very few really make it to the top and stay. This is one that we expect will be able to accomplish that, as he has already made a huge mark by winning 3 times in a row now. Looking for a 4th, but this SCV will fall in the start. So nice start for MarineLord.
Yeah. Clem has actually been winning all of these European regionals, so it is kind of expected that he at least makes the finals, but he's not there yet. It's got to beat MarineLord, then Showtime, and then Cyril. That's still a very, very, very difficult road, which, you know, MarineLord is definitely a scary opponent, even though we'd usually say the other 2 names are scarier. MarineLord has, you gotta say officially at this point, just now a name that you can say, oh, I think he's top 4, and not be super incorrect about that. You're not, you know, no one's gonna fight you too hard on that. Maybe they'll say, no, I think he's top 6, not top 4, and it's like, okay, whatever, dude. But he has made it to the top 4 twice now. And he's also taken down, if he does make it to the top 4, he does still take down a lot of the powerful names. You know, kind of along with him. So it's absolutely a tough road ahead, Clem, for both of them, as we have a little scuffle going down. They both have very similar units, so there's not much to be gained here.
Yeah, good start for MarineLord though, who was 1 unit behind and now gets actually the first poke onto the a little bit over eager perhaps Reapers at the front there. So he will get the first couple of engagements going in his favor. Now with the next units arriving here for him, he will be safe on defense. And this is an investment from Clem, right? Like this is a barracks that had a reactor in order to kind of overwhelm with his Reapers early on. And it did not pan out as one gets picked off right away, right off the gates. And then MarineLord once again with the first shot with the Hellions from the side. So very, very nice start for MarineLord.
MarineLord also does something similar and even dedicates more to it. So now the question is, was the dedication worth it for him, or was transferring over into Cyclones and Marines better? The Cyclone does get taken down, unfortunately. Couldn't get up to that high ground before it died, but the Medivac also appears, should help the Marines beat this back. But it's a question of how many SCVs are lost in the process. The answer? Just the Mule by the looks of things? Oh, 1 SCV and a Mule.
Yeah, great focus firing on the way out there from Clem, as we expect him to do. Both Ravens will fire up at the same time. When all things are said and done, MarineLord has a 1 worker advantage. He has lost a few less resources, 222 less resources. So definitely a slight advantage going towards him, perhaps to be elongated by this Reaper, who will find an additional 2 SCVs by the looks of it. Clem not being able to repair in time. It looks like, I mean, repair time and mining time is also valuable. So this Reaper from MarineLord really finding way too much success.
The fact that it's lasting so long is almost more successful than the initial push. If it gets the Command Center SCV, which it quite doesn't, that would have been amazing. But not going to happen. Meanwhile, the drop has occurred here. Interference Matrix to push away the Medivac. If he gets the Cyclone, then the Medivac will live. Oh, gets the Raven, though. Yeah. And the Medivac's still going to live. It can't take anything with it. But getting this, the Raven is excellent for Clem.
Yeah, and that is to Clem's credit. I mean, MarineLord really overextending there with the Raven, Clem capitalizing, and that's why we see MarineLord kind of not microing the Reaper on the other side, is because he was trying to punish this as hard as he could. He does end up finding the punish, but only partially so. 8 Marines, but ends up losing a Raven in the process, so not the cleanest. Still, slight advantage, I think, MarineLord. Tiny bits and pieces here as he continues to be just one worker ahead. But that Raven was so important, right, CG?
Yeah, I would actually say that alongside Clem having a faster third CC, having a second Raven is so much more important. Yeah, those are the advantages for Clem. MarineLord does still have a stim advantage, which can be worth talking about, but maybe a little later on, since we're talking about the tank Marine, usually plural Raven push. I think MarineLord's, I don't know if he's expecting much from this, but if he can lock down Clem in his natural for a little while, kind of scare him, then more power to him. But I guess MarineLord's got to figure he can't do much more.
Yeah, the tanks will unsiege and try to position forward here to scare MarineLord away. But yeah, that one Marine from Clem also removes completely the potential for any surprise from MarineLord to get the siege off first or something like that. And like you said, I mean, that Raven takes the wind out of his sails. That Raven fallen, that is for MarineLord. It's really so difficult to make something happen here when you only have one interference matrix to the 2 or 3 of your opponent. So now Clem will establish his third base. At the same time, MarineLord is also establishing his, but his orbital command is morphing on location. So on that front, he's a tiny bit behind. And yeah, can he make something happen, Jess, with the stim being a little bit faster? Or the upgrades are also an advantage, I suppose?
That's actually very, very good. MarineLord, he's going to have faster combat shields as well, which, if he has combat shields to no combat shields, will be huge. Doesn't seem to usually play out that way. They usually are able to buy time for both of them to have those upgrades, but at 1-1 also being so far ahead, MarineLord does have the advantage army to army. Once Marines become the biggest factor. So that's a little MMA move there. Once Marines are the biggest factor, we're not there yet. It's still a lot more about the tanks. We're still even building Vikings. But at the very least, also another benefit for MarineLord is that he does have slightly faster Marine production. It was only slightly, though. And I think Clem's actually about to exceed him. He's got the 2 barracks coming down faster than him. So a bit back and forth on the production timing. Definitely ahead on the upgrade timing for MarineLord.
Yeah, both players for the time being content to sit back, or at least looking for opportunities to kind of like block the other player to do too much damage, as they establish their economy with sensor towers going up pretty much matched on both ends. They're going to activate at the same time there, as you see on the minimap. And MarineLord still posturing to try and make something happen, but Clem, with timely scans, will know exactly where and what MarineLord has to work with. 6
Vikings to 8. Second Raven, though, for Clem. So he might still be able to take a better engagement. Very good timing on the unsiege there. It's ditto for that tank. I think it is going to survive. Yep, because of that. Very nicely done.
Yeah, they can't unsiege if they're already interference matrixed. So very, very cool. Can you actually unsiege while the projectile is on the way? Is that what Clem is doing here?
Basically slightly before it.
Yeah, Clem's going for it, and this is actually huge from Clem. He identifies that MarineLord doesn't have enough. MarineLord does have a few more Vikings, actually, so if he can at least retain that, he will get away with this with some semblance of an advantage, but that is a terrible tale for him. I mean, just the tank count has been mostly reset on his side of things, and Clem with a comfortable cleanup.
Not too much more MarineLord could have done about that, I suppose. The Ravens coming in off the high ground probably weren't something that he could have stopped, so cutting those interference matrix is pretty big. It is unfortunate, though, because that was supposedly a strong moment there for MarineLord. He had combat shields, and Clem did not. So usually that is very impactful, but like I said, it hasn't been so much the Marine focus until basically just now. Now MarineLord has plenty of Marines where it would have been a huge factor, but Clem still has plenty of tanks. 6-3, since he took such a dominating engagement. And he is going to push the issue while trying to get a 4th CC up behind this. So is MarineLord, and his is almost done, actually. But again, those upgrades. If MarineLord can make sure not to get pushed too deep, and he's not going to get pushed, he actually jumps on top of this, maybe in error. Yeah, I don't know about this. A lot of tanks still left alive for Clem.
Yeah, pretty similar number of Marines there. I can kind of understand where MarineLord was, where his head was at, because with that watchtower, it makes a really awkward choke for the units of Clem that weren't pre-spread. So he thinks your units are going to come in at me at a line, and that's going to make up for my unit deficiency, and tries to exploit the timing where the tanks are sieging. But it's simply not enough, as Clem does have those extra tanks. And yeah, the game will progress, but definitely now advantage for the youngling, as MarineLord is in a little bit of trouble in terms of tanks. It's 7 tanks to 2.
That is troublesome, yeah. It's not a lot of tanks at all, but MarineLord does have, again, those faster upgrades, and he's got more medevacs, which, I mean, probably, they're definitely not as important as having a good tank count, but if he's going to get a very wide arc, then that is going to be his game plan, basically, using his Marines to their fullest potential includes having medevacs over them, and that is something that MarineLord is going to have to try and do, is just get a big concave, because without a good tank count, he can really protect one base with tanks, but not 2. One tank over here to help the planetary is going to get destroyed by the looks of things.
MarineLord's going for it, though. He's going to drop on top of all of these tanks, identifying that there's not enough bio for Clem. And I would tend to agree. What a beautiful move here from MarineLord, dislodging Clem. On the other side, the attack from Clem was also repelled by these Vikings of MarineLord on the airspace, which kind of gives the information of MarineLord. If you have this much on the north, then I can likely just collapse onto the south and make that work. So great moves here by him. Also exploiting the fact that his 2-2 just kicked in. A very, very nice minute for Marine.
Yeah, I was talking about concaves, but it kind of, it's not concaves, it was just dropping. But the point is, more Marines being unloaded on top of those tanks is an excellent use of positioning, basically. And kudos to MarineLord for identifying that so perfectly. He gets to dislodge any pressure on his 4th base, looks to be handling, well, eventually will handle this 3rd base pressure as well with the help of the Liberator. By time for more reinforcements, some SCVs will go down, but nothing too severe here. Tank as well. I mean, pretty worthwhile little push there from Clem, but nothing game-ending, as both of them continue to upgrade, build up their base count, and start their transition over into Ravens. Both of them started that transition pretty similar times, but it is going to be faster. He's got the reactor for Clem, and he's already affording an additional starport. So we'll see how this works out.
Yeah, MarineLord has kept up with his upgrades this entire time, as he starts 3-3 timely as well. Now looking to push out on the map. I was loving the, whoa, let's see what this engagement brings. However, as Clem this time perhaps overextending. No, it looks like it's going to be just enough to take down this army. Nope. MarineLord will stand tall at the end there. So both players with slight overextensions, misjudgments, but very difficult to tell which way it's going to go until the very end there. I mean, that tank surviving just barely.
Still a very low tank count for MarineLord. He hasn't been producing 2 at a time super consistently, and that might be, I mean, that is a choice, because he's affording so many expensive starport units as well. It does mean that he's going, okay, I need Ravens, then I'll add on the 2nd tank. So that's a big difference between the two, and just the retention of tanks as well. Clem hasn't had to worry about that nearly as much. Actually, he's lost more tanks at this point, so it is just better production on the tank count. Clem, though, up to 3-4 starports now. Like, he is obviously going towards this late game. He wants to be doing the exact same thing that MarineLord is doing right here, right now, which is getting the interference matrix off, but he is not in position. His 3rd base already under attack. Plenty of his tanks. He's got such a good tank count, but a lot of them were out of position and unsieged. MarineLord manages to find a bit of a hole in the defenses, but can't find much more, as Clem does finally bring his army over. And at the end of the day, their armies had a lot of similar things, and the 3-3 had not yet kicked in.
Yeah, and MarineLord trying to carve his way through that base. It's such a difficult angle as well because of the dead space in between, that there is a really annoying corner that all of his units kind of have to funnel through instead of just running straight onto the tanks of Clem. So that does end up buying Clem enough time to get back and not take too much damage. But nice attempt from MarineLord. A MarineLord who has also started a Liberator transition, anticipating that he should have the air advantage. I'm not sure that he is right, however. They're very, very close to each other. More Ravens on the side of MarineLord. And if he can get those Liberators into play, he is one of the best Terran players, I think, with positioning and just with that methodical encroaching and approach with those Liberators in particular.
Absolutely could see them on the front lines. We also could see them trying to harass as the game gets bigger, especially on 2000 atmospheres. There's going to be a lot of undefended bases, especially for sneaky attacks from the Liberators. But right now, using them on the front lines, Clem does see it and knows that he can't give up too much ground, but even try to focus fire and give him a chance. There's one already killed. Painting the tanks orange, not especially helpful. An engagement is going to be coming down until that's at least done and dusted. That does mean the planetary might fall. Oh, he's actually going to take the engagement, I guess.
Yeah.
The interference matrix do go down for Clem, but he's missing so much armor from this engagement. Hey, I guess he just really wanted to save that planetary, but he can't do it.
Exactly. Very scary moment. Clem really wanting to save that base. He thinks it's crucial to his success moving on forward. But in spite of the Ravens being used and in spite of them spending all of their energy, he's not going to be able to find the good engagement that he was looking for. The PF will go down, and he will even lose some units in the process.
Clem's got to play, well, to be frank, maybe a little bit smarter, a little more cautious, patient, maybe is the best word for it. Acknowledge that he couldn't break out of that in that scenario and just let the base go instead of letting the base go and losing some army for it. As it is, Clem has plenty of chances to recover, but as long as he's pinned on his side of the map, those chances are less and less. He needs to get something on the other side of the map or take a really good engagement, which just hasn't happened yet.
Yeah, I wonder what made him go for it, because he can see exactly what we can see on screen, and even without those tanks, the Marine numbers were very, very similar. So maybe thinking my 3-3 just kicked in, maybe I have a timing, but MarineLord has had 3-3. That is the only thing that I can think of that maybe makes Clem take that fight, however. So it's a rough one, and now MarineLord in turn is gonna disable the 2 tanks. He is going to be able to pick those up, so that's already a victory in and of itself. The tanks of Clem are gonna siege here. Not enough bio for Clem, but enough tanks, however, are gonna be able to take a very favorable engagement here to start. Oh my God.
The Vikings met by the Unsiege, but the Unsiege is met by the Marines pouncing right on top of them. Even a body block with the Vikings attempted there, as MarineLord does lose almost all of his tanks. He still got some back at home, so he will be able to hold at least, certainly his natural, probably his 4th. But this space at the bottom right, the one that was just scanned, might be a goner. Funnily enough, there's very little anti-air, so it kind of skirts off to the left side. Yeah, it's going to be safe, funnily enough, which means that MarineLord still has plenty of bases to use. Plus, he has been on 5 bases steadily, whereas Clem's had a bit more trouble. And MarineLord's even get to the very top left, which I don't think Clem has scouted. Clem's also been losing a lot of Ravens. He's lost 11 Ravens to MarineLord's 5.
Oh, wow. Yeah, I can't help but to think that I don't know if it's nerfs or what it is, but both players kind of going for blow in terms of underestimating each other's armies a couple of times throughout this game. That last engagement was not good for MarineLord. It looked really scary for a second there, and that kind of lets Clem back into this game to a good degree, so that's exciting in its own right. Now MarineLord looking to carve an advantage here, as he has a lot of Ravens and energy, will be able to disable a lot of those tanks preemptively. Now the Marines charging into the planetary fortress. The tanks not even choosing to siege. I'm not sure if that's the right choice. Now deciding to siege much later, as the SCV repair is good enough, and this PF will fall, but it's a lot more costly than it needed to be.
This is so hard for Clem to tackle. I don't know what he was supposed to do better there, but at the very least, he tried his best and tried to get a backstab, but it just didn't really work out. He needed more Ravens to successfully come from behind, I think, and maybe even, make sure that MarineLord wasn't paying attention with his own Raven Viking flock. Clem a bit desperate to return some damage. He's down in economy. He's a bit down in that army supply, and he's not finding too much success as far as killing this orbital. He could move over to the top left and go after that planetary. Takes a little bit longer, but this many tanks, he would be able to get it. But it looks like he is going to stand his ground right here, which I don't know how long that's actually going to last. He needs more reinforcements here, or MarineLord could break them.
Yeah, and this is a base that ultimately MarineLord can lift off, and Clem couldn't do anything about it. MarineLord feels confident enough to just go for it. Clem will drop as many turrets as he can, but that's not going to be enough. All of his tank fleet will get deleted, and with that, Clem is going to have to escape. He can't really even fight that planetary fortress, as there is barely any medevacs, and the bio is already pretty bruised. Things are looking up for MarineLord to take the first game of the series here, Jess. Clem in a lot of trouble.
It has felt like MarineLord's played a better late game, even though that's not 100% true. He's not playing so much of a better game. It's been close. It's been within about 20 supply for a large portion of this game. But yeah, everything's going slightly MarineLord's favor. and he continues to take leads. Now up 30 supply. He saved it another command center due to the lack of anti-air up to the top left. And MarineLord is, I mean, I think with the next push, if he does get to Clem's 5th base, okay, before that actually, and MarineLord's going to win. And there it is. Game 1 goes to MarineLord.
Yeah, a very impressive game 1 from MarineLord. I am with you. I think that Clem should have gone for the PF there towards the end, right? Like that base and that position was just never going to fall. But I mean, I applaud Clem's decision to kind of make something happen on the other side of the map when he identifies that MarineLord has a stronghold against his PF and all of his tanks are on the other side of the map. So Clem really trying to make something happen, but unable to do so. MarineLord with a masterclass in TVT, to be quite honest.
Late game was really good from him. I think he controlled the Ravens better, which was a little bit of like actual control, making sure they didn't pass over Marines or over impassable terrain with the rest of the army. But then also the way that he always seemed to have better situations with the Ravens. He always got the anti-armor missile off before Clem did. I don't even remember seeing that many anti-armor missiles from Clem. He would get more auto turrets down in better positions. And I feel like he also just took control of the map and never truly let it go, which is definitely not where Clem is confident. And also just, in general, going to be tough for a positional game to get back in. Once you've lost position in TVT, it feels almost impossible to get the position back. So you have to take big risks, and none of them ever paid off. So I think that's not the type of game that Clem wants to play. It's the type of game that no Terran versus Terran wants to play.
Yeah, and we saw a big risk payoff, but it was for MarineLord, right? When he actually drops onto the tanks of Clem, where he had established that position that is ever so important that you were talking about. But MarineLord actually drops on top of it. I mean, what a daredevil to know that he can... I don't even know if he had a scan, but he certainly had the information that there was 2 medevacs full on the other side, thanks to his Vikings that also repelled that attack at the same time. So, I mean, those 10 to 15 seconds and the whole minute before that for MarineLord was a huge turnaround that he never seemed to let go from that point on. So amazing job from him. A good game overall from both players. And now on the shortest rush distance map, not one that we get to see often, in the bottom left-hand side for Coca Authentic Pepit, it is MarineLord.
In the top right for Team Liquid, he is Clem. I do feel like I've always liked MarineLord's TVT. Clem he's obviously good in TVT, but it just feels like Clem, when he's having the most fun and looks the most powerful, is TVZ engagements, honestly. It's not like his other matchups are bad. It's just like TVZ, something with the kid, like it just works, right? Just like Scarlet has like a metronome for creep spread. Clem has whatever equivalent that would be for TVZ engagements. But Clem is usually good in TVT engagements. I do feel like that last game is proof that MarineLord can oftentimes be better. We move on to Beckett, though, where it seems heavily unlikely that we're going to get a late game like that, where they're both going to get pretty evenly to a bunch of Ravens, basically, and play that sort of game. This should be a lot more about the early and mid-game tank push, which... I mean, that didn't necessarily go all that well for Clem 100% of the time, but it was a little more of where that back and forth was.
Most definitely tanks, maybe even Liberators. Could Liberators work in the early game? It's kind of difficult to get that air control, but...
Yeah, there's actually a fairly devastating kind of common push on Beckett Industries that one of them might try to do, where you don't go into Ravens, but you rather go into Vikings pretty quickly. So you gain that air control, you push with a limited, like I think 2 tanks, maybe a third is on the way. And then you get a Liberator as soon as you realize that, yes, you have fully established. Because Ravens are awesome. Ravens are good. But Ravens, first of all, you want plural Ravens. And then second of all, you want a little bit of energy on them. And it becomes a question of, does the person with the positional units of Viking Liberator tank win against the guy who's getting the better army in 30 seconds? The one that has 2 Ravens, 4 auto turrets, you know what I mean?
Exactly, yeah.
So we might see one of them try that. But right now, they're both respecting the idea of fast rushes. So factory expand versus a high ground expand, low ground expand. MarineLord is playing a little bit more dangerous, I suppose. But I think I'm okay with it.
I'm okay with it too, and I like it. I mean, that makes a lot of sense, right? Like the Ravens will gain value over time. They obviously get more energy as the game progresses. But also, I mean, when you use the interference matrix, you want to have enough units to take down the units that you're actually going to be disabling. We've seen it in the early game. It's not nearly as effective. Even in the last game, the interference matrix against the medevac, while it prevents the loading back in for Clem, it doesn't completely super punish, and the medevac still gets away, and so on and so forth, because there's not enough damage output in the early game. So Ravens definitely tend to scale up a lot. And yeah, I would love to see someone take advantage of that. If the Raven is the expectation, otherwise, and one player wants to be aggressive, maybe Vikings would be really, really cool, like you're suggesting. Let's see, as MarineLord is taking an extra gas in his natural base already, Clem is gonna match him, but a little bit slower, as he did take that CC on the height.
Yeah, playing very safe there. Clem is doing a build that's totally off what I was just talking about. You know, 8 times out of 10, you're going to have Ravens versus Vikings in some capacity. How much, how many, how fast, those are all questions, but usually that. This time around, Clem is going for Marauder Hellion. So this is one of the more aggressive builds that he does still like to do. I've said it before, I'll say it again. I have yet to actually witness this work that extremely well, maybe once every 12 times. I'll say that. So let's see if this is one of those times. It's going to jump on top of the Cyclone. Oh. This is the exact way the build wants to start, because then the Cyclone can't kill the medevac. This is by far the best start to this build I've seen in a while for Clem. In fact, so well, could be game ending.
Yeah, it looks incredible. The second Cyclone, however, will pop out, and the SCVs are in position to repair it as well. But 2 Marauders output a lot of damage, and it looks like they're gonna not barely catch the Cyclone. Where is the repair? It's not gonna be found, as the Hellions will shorten the distance, and Clem with a swift, quick, and dirty Game 2 victory.
Okay, I'm gonna log that in. All right, I've now seen it work again after 6 previous failed attempts where it just gets smacked away. That is what you want to have happen. You want to be able to jump right on top of basically the big factory unit, so either a Cyclone or a tank, and then pop that so it doesn't kill your medevac. 1, so it gives you opportunities to continue harassing in case the actual build push itself doesn't do enough damage, but then 2, so that the actual push could possibly win the game. Without the medevac, it just is like, that probably doesn't do a whole lot. But with it, with the Marauders still alive, with the Hellions already in the face of the SCVs, oh yeah, that could be a hard build to hold.
Yeah, that was very, very well executed from Clem. And yeah, I mean, obviously going up against the Cyclone is probably the best case scenario, as it will be one of the quicker and most expensive units to fall to the Marauders. And it wants to be positioned forward. So you can kind of see how the medevacs, like the medevac is kind of like a bait, right? Because it's loaded with a unit that counters the medevac. So it seems pretty cool. And what I love about this is that we've seen, you know, Clem and earlier Serral kind of get a little bit dirtier, kind of feel like they have to bring out tricks themselves to punch back down these underdogs, I think, fair to call them.
Yeah, I think so. Again, match history heavily favoring Clem here. Yeah, he throws that, I would say in a best of 5, I would even expect him to throw that. Either that or some type of other medevac build, I suppose. Like, he's got like a tricky Marine Widowmine drop in TVT. He does have a Cyclone Marine drop as well. But one of those in a best of 5 from Clem. Because I do think that he likes to reset momentum with those types of builds, and I do think that occasionally he does just get a freebie victory. I don't think it's that common, but when he gets it, it makes it look super overpowered. Now, a dozen people in Twitch chat are going to try it and fail with it, but every so often you get that really easy victory.
Yeah, I mean, the execution certainly seems a little bit tricky for that build. But yeah, it works out this time around. Lightshade will be the next map, another short-ish map, not nearly as short, however, as Beckett. So we'll see what the players have in store. As spawning. I said spawning. In the top left-hand side, it is the French player, MarineLord. He's red, he's for Cap. I guess they're both French.
And also French for Team Liquid, he is Clem. All right. So, Beckett Industries, done away with. Don't have to worry about that one. Lightshade, yeah, also one of these shorter maps, but not as short as Beckett. I don't think the build that I was talking about, where there's like directly into Vikings Liberator, is that's as strong here. And I don't think Clem is going to try another Marauder Hellion build. You can kind of do away with those two strategies. But that still leaves a lot of other potential, especially I think when Clem does get a confirmation that some of his early game tactics can work, I do think he likes to use them. Because that is I feel like that is where he's going to be most comfortable. Not playing this kind of stock standard Viking, Raven, tank, oh, who's positioning better. I mean, does anyone enjoy that in TBT? But rather, medevac, action, fast-paced, harassment. I think that's where Clem is going to try and do more so of.
Yeah, definitely. MarineLord, not a slow player by any means, but Clem, obviously, he's going to profit from trading actions against just about anyone. So definitely his comfort zone. And maybe that is one of the things that has kind of held him back in this particular matchup in the past, as it is one of the more positional matchups come the mid and late game. Once the game slows down and that Clem still wants to go at 1,000,000 miles per hour, that's when he can start to perhaps fall a little bit apart compared to other players of similar caliber.
I think MarineLord in that first game did again prove that he's slightly better in those situations. Not so much so that it's impossible for Clem to win, but just slightly better. Clem's going to have to be worried if it does come down to that positional play. There are ways to avoid like even having to play that. You know, one of them is trying to go for a medevac push drop first and foremost, but there also has been a bit of a resurgence of multiple barracks openers, kind of putting you into a 2-on-1 situation. I think they're extremely risky and still very rare, but I wouldn't be surprised if Clem was the type of person to have been experimenting with it, because honestly, it is the fun way to play TPT as well.
Oh my god, he gets it! He didn't miss a single shot in order to punish that Reaper for killing his SCV. So MarineLord, even if MarineLord hadn't dropped the grenade, that Reaper would have gotten away. So missing the grenade was actually what cost him the Reaper, or dropping the grenade at all. Just clicking it back to his base would have had it survive. But yeah, wow. I mean, that Clem really just amazing job, not missing a beat there to kill the Reaper.
And it's fairly important because they both are dedicating to more Reapers and more Hellions again. So this is kind of like the first game where Clem did stop before MarineLord did. So MarineLord had a few more units to work with. So that's what's happening here. Clem is going to go up this ramp and get, maybe a good engagement. Maybe okay. Actually, his Hellion gets targeted down really quickly. Kind of goes first around with that one Reaper, though. Gets the grenades on, goes after these opponent's Hellion, and is going to win this little micro war despite being on the low ground. And MarineLord actually just gonna have to buy a little bit of time, but only a little bit. There's the extra units I was talking about from MarineLord.
Yeah, incredible start to the fight from Clem there. I mean, just dragging out Hellion Fire, which is AoE fire effectively with one of his Reapers. However, on the chase, MarineLord might get to punish this Hellion in the corner. It's nope, not gonna be too much of a corner there, as he doesn't find the last flame, but he's committing for it. Will find it, but at the expense of his own Hellion and the Reaper, actually. So all in all, a pretty good start for Clem. But again, yeah, dragging the Hellion Fire was so cool with that one Reaper, right? Because it mitigates the AoE effect that has.
I feel like Clem is also smiling at this because this is deja vu. This is so similar to the first game. The one cheeky Reaper comes in. He'll have to handle that with just these couple of Marines easy enough, but you will want to focus primarily on the medevac drop that he's doing. Picked up the Cyclone and 4 Marines. He's going to be looking for a little bit of damage. There's not much, I think, that's usually gained from this, although these Marines not working together. Cyclone a little bit later. Oh, it's starting to snowball a little bit. Starting to snowball a lot. The Cyclone here can't be locked on because Clem would just micro it with the medevac. So you want to get the lock on the medevac, but Clem's good about boosting it backwards. That might not be possible. Oh, we have the lock-ons, and the medevacs get microed a lot better, but the auto turret came down to at least help trade out those Cyclones. And at the end of the day, MarineLord ends up losing 3 SCVs, but staying still at the same worker counts. And they both lose a Cyclone. The benefit there is that Clem got his medevac out alive.
Yeah, both players are going to be comfortable enough to drop their 3rd CC. But yeah, like you said, Clem does still have that medevac to work with, which has to be a threat in the mind of MarineLord. Both players actively keeping up in terms of workers and getting situated now for the later stages of the game. But Clem feeling like he has a little bit more momentum, and with that medevac to work with, it is an important piece that will allow him to kind of reposition his tank a little bit faster. That means fire onto the natural SCVs, and that is annoying already to deal with.
Well, he knows that one of those Ravens is missing one more auto turret. It is going to be triple Raven from MarineLord, but he's not going to wait for that third Raven, just trying to break it right here, right now. But the auto turret of Clem was actually in range of MarineLord's tank there. Same was not said about MarineLord's auto turret. This is still a very awkward situation.
Yeah, it's turning from awkward to very dangerous. I mean, this was a nuisance, but now, after losing that tank and having very little energy to work with on his Ravens, MarineLord looks to be in a dire situation.
Again, he does have 3 Ravens, 2 on the front lines, but that is going to eventually be a lot of auto turrets. I do think Clem, as long as he's aware that he has to pull back at some point, right? Which I think he will be, but you can't just stay here forever, especially if you don't see Vikings, because what if they're getting medevacs? Not that this would be that incredibly good in this situation, because MarineLord's nowhere close to having Sim even started. But yeah, you do just have to push back eventually, most of the time in TVT. Pull back rather, not push, but you know what? Clem actually does the push. Auto turrets again, taking out another tank. MarineLord not getting any good situation here. He's not drawing a line in the sand at any place that's useful. His command center is being bombarded. His SCVs have to be pulled. He's going to try to break it yet again, but again, his tank got shot down before even really being part of the engagements. Wow. I would say most of the time that does not end right then and there. But Clem able to pick up yet another kind of easier victory.
Yeah, I think if we look at the pieces, it looks kind of evenish. It looks like MarineLord should be able to pull his SCVs and dislodge, even if it is at a cost. But I mean, Raven Energy is such heavily in favor of Clem that he is able to even continue to push, not just hold his position, which was already super deadly. So very good job from Clem. Will net him an advantage in this series. We're going to go to a quick break, and then we continue.
Some interesting conversation on that point. We're getting into game 4 between Clem and MarineLord. Clem now leads the series 2-1 after, one cheeky build that was very successful, very easy game ending. And then the second game, the last game that is, it just didn't feel like it was supposed to snowball that badly. But MarineLord did get out-tank Raven, basically.
Yeah, for sure. I think that, the start went good for Clem, right? Like keeping that medevac, then the follow-up push makes it so that medevac is further dangerous, forces MarineLord to utilize his Raven energy. I think is very important in that. Anyway, we can break it down later, but in the top right-hand side, before Niall gets super upset, as he usually does, it's Clem. Niall, of course, our observer.
Yeah, known as a very outrageous person, definitely. Bottom left, it is MarineLord. Someone who gets so easily enraged.
Seriously. We're joking, of course. Niall is lovely. But the Raven energy was spent. And I think at some point when MarineLord tries to poke forward to clear things out with his tank and his own Raven, and Clem answers with his own auto turrets, and then it's just like he's not able to, so he spends further Raven energy, he loses his tank, the Marine tank or the Marine count goes lower, and then he has one Raven with no energy to 2 Ravens of Clem with energy, and just a very annoying position where he's not even mining from the natural. So yeah, every second that passed was definitely going to be harder and harder for MarineLord. Maybe he could have cleared it if he pulls his SCVs, but it would have been so costly, I think, that it's okay to do what he did.
Yeah, it was always going to be a little bit more difficult thanks to the auto turret being removed from the equation, I guess, right from the get-go. But it is definitely one of those TVT situations, seems to happen more in TVT, where you're just like, okay, if I waited a little bit longer, I probably would have been better off, but I have to make sure not to wait too long, because then it just gets worse, right? There's waiting long enough to get just the right amounts, and then there's waiting too long that your opponent gets even more entrenched, that your opponent goes, oh, I guess it's not going to break me, and brings more reinforcements over. Because that's, that's the trick about TVT, is that because of the frequency of drops and the way that you can quickly the momentum can turn from one way to another, you don't have consistent reinforcements. You aren't rallying Marines and tanks to the middle of the map. If you are, you're taking a risk. So that's why I was talking about Clem having to make sure he doesn't overstay his welcome. But it did just go one bad thing led to another bad thing that Clem was totally fine to stay where he was.
Yeah, it was just so many little things, I guess. But you're right. If there was like a drop or something like a medevac on the side of MarineLord, then Clem could definitely be backstabbed, and that could definitely be dangerous. But yeah, what I loved about that contain is it wasn't just a contain, it was also kind of threatening the economy the entire time. So MarineLord needed to dislodge it, wasn't able to. Beautiful moves, and all to the credit of Clem. There's not many players that will be as quick to drop those auto turrets, or to know to drop those auto turrets and response, or to pick up. Obviously it's Clem really can make magic happen with small numbers of units, and that's exactly what we saw last game there. So fantastic job from him. Now, this time around, a little bit surprised at the approach from Clem, and as he is going once again for this big number of Reapers and Hellions, which is good to sit up the ramp, but not so great aggressively because there's a ramp, right?
Yeah, exactly. That does kind of sum it up. But if you think your opponent's also doing something similar, again, best case scenario, I guess, is that if MarineLord is going 2 Reaper 1 Hellion and tried to break the ramp just for some reason, that would be Clem just being like, oh, thank you for the donation. But I would say that it's just very unlikely that you're going to expect a lot of Reaper pressure builds on a map that has a natural ramp. This is a pressure build for MarineLord, but it's not about what we see coming across right now. It's about the medevac that's coming across.
Oh, okay.
And a medevac with a tank, there's not a whole lot that Reapers usually do against that.
Oh, so maybe if he can siege this tank to the left or something, he will be able to make something happen. The Cyclone, however, arrives at the perfect time, but the first lock-on has been spent, and MarineLord already entrenched in a very strong position. So similar to Clem last time around, the difference is, of course, he's not threatening the economy, he's not killing SCVs in the process, but this command center is soon to be needed to be lifted up. So Clem does need to make something happen here sooner rather than later. That Marine could have been microed into the medevac perhaps, but we're again nitpicking, and let's see. as this Reaper will most likely, again, not be saved. These are now 2 units that have gone down for free to the last 2 lock-ons. Here comes Clem with everything. Something grab, will it be enough? I think with the auto turret, he has it.
Absolutely. I actually really have to applaud the way that Clem handled that. So MarineLord, he was 2 options with that type of build, right? With the Medivac tank drop on Oxide, there is what he did, which is a bit of a gotcha move. I hope I drop on top of something similar to the Marauders, and I hope I kill it right off the bat. Or there's the slow and steady move where you drop it on the cliff edge that's to the right below the barracks. But that's been kind of figured out. I do think it would have been okay in this case, but, you know, obviously MarineLord chose what he chose. Clem reacted so quickly and so calmly as well that he saved all the units, and we're talking about 1 tank with very little buffer. All it takes is like a certain number of any unit, honestly, to actually overwhelm that type of push, because 1 tank just doesn't cover a whole lot. So whether it's an SCV pool, which also came along, or just literal bodies of Reapers being thrown at it, I think Clem was going to be okay, but he showed a great amount of, I guess, was fast, quick, and he was patient enough to say, okay, I'll have 2 Cyclones in a second and a Raven. Then I come in with a Concave, easy peasy. And it was easy peasy. Now he has a lead in workers and slightly in army.
Yes, well, that's really dangerous for MarineLord going further into this game. Of course, he has those tanks on the high ground, providing him some safe haven here, but he's potentially, I mean, Clem just has map control right now, CG, and he is taking a slightly faster CC. He can threaten this area, but he doesn't have tanks of his own. Wow, how big is that?
Well, might be met in turn. Oh, okay, yeah, it's huge. Clem saves his Raven, but kills MarineLord's. And now MarineLord, well, he was probably not incredibly happy about how that push ended up going. It wasn't the worst thing ever. Now is, you know, very sad about the start of this game. Gonna try and get some revenge with the Medivac. It's still alive. Another lock onto the Raven, but fortunately not going to lose it this time around. Clem is going to have to back away from his little pseudo-contain there.
Yeah, 1 lock-on, but not 2 lucky enough for MarineLord, as that would have been devastating to lose 2 Ravens. Of course, this time around, Clem does get a little bit punished with the Cyclone falling. And now the drop from MarineLord looks to be very... It's going to be difficult to make it work, right? Like, there's so much already here in position for Clem. It's going to be met by a bunch of Vikings, and the Medivac with the 8 Marines will get punished.
Well, this is officially a terrible game for MarineLord. Nothing has gone his way.
Yeah.
I think MarineLord knows it. It's not so terrible that you tap out, especially in a TVT, but it's painful. You know that you're really not going to have a lot of moves. There's not a lot of things that you have going for you, so it's all about playing catch up, and that means not really having a whole lot to say as far as pressure goes. So yeah, you just kind of wait and receive Clem's push and hope that it works out okay for you.
Yeah, look at Clem. He is kind of saying, I'm coming from this side, moves MarineLord's army, scans, knows where MarineLord's army is. There is still 2 tanks on location, but these Ravens have just about unlimited energy, so they're going to drop the auto turrets to dislodge the tanks right away rather than disable them, and MarineLord will be forced to tap